Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. The show is designed to give you solutions to your day-to-day management and leadership problems. It's hosted by Matthew Haddock, a frontline manager and leader with over 25 years of experience. If you're ready, then let's get on with the show.
Hi and welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. This show is here to give you help and advice and tips that might improve your management skill and get the results you've always wanted. Make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode and share it with anyone you think might benefit from listening. Well, without any more delays, let's get on with this week's show. Well, hello and welcome back to the show. Well, I think I'm going to try and do something a little bit different on this week's show. I've always used the show as being relatively short. So if you think about some of the casts I've been doing, they're all around, the 5 to 12 minute mark. And I think those are great because they're bite size, people consume them when they can on the watch, and sometimes you can consume more than one show. I'm not a big believer in having shows that go on for hours and hours and hours. But I have had some feedback and a number of people asking if they could do a little bit more, if I could do a little bit more of an in-depth show. So today we're going to try and do a little bit of a longer show and dive in a little bit more details. Let me know if it works. Obviously, you can send me some feedback to managermattpodcasts@gmail.com. And that'd be interesting to see if this format does or doesn't work. And if you're used to the shorter version, I've got a simple tip, is listen to half of it, turn it off, and then listen to the other half. See? Simple management tips wherever you are in the world. I've always got them for you. So, let's start. So the title of today's show is the Top 10 Tips. Try and say that with your teeth in for being a better manager. So we'll start the first thing. So let's have a look at it. So let's have a look at what is management to start with. Is it an art or is it a science? Well, it's a bit of both really, isn't it? I mean, we all know that people are not born leaders. You hear about this, the born leader, and they'll cite people throughout history. But I don't think you're really born into it. I mean, you don't just pop into the world and all of a sudden go, whoa, leader. That one there, put him over there. He's in the leader class. Or boom, sheep, so definite CEO, put her over there. It don't happen in the nursery and it don't happen anywhere really until you start to develop your own ways of working. Now, I'm not saying you're not predisposed to being better at being in public or predisposed to talking better. Some people are more introvert and some people are more extrovert. It would kill some people to stand up on a stage and actually just talk about themselves. I mean, even in interviews, I've had people who seem to struggle with what I would say was a basic question. Tell me about yourself. Oh, well, that's a tough one. Is it really? Yourself? Tell me about your strengths. What makes you tick? Oh, I didn't expect this kind of questioning. Well, So I understand that some people are more reserved and some people aren't. Well, that's fine. But I think to maximise the effectiveness of a manager, you need to increase the exposure you've got to different subject matters at a younger age, to read more, listen more, and it does improve yourself to get more confidence to be the leader or manager you want to be in the future. So obviously there is a little bit of an art to it, but a lot of it's around science. And of course, what are you there for? What are you there as a manager to do? If you think of it in a base level, you need to be able to justify the cost of you. Yes, I know it sounds a bit strange, but you've got to justify your cost as a person. So if you've got an operation that has 6 people in it producing 1,000 widgets, whatever those may be, or 6 people handling thousands of calls or whatever they do in call centres, and you're added as a manager, then if they're just doing the same number, then what value have you added to that business? So you've got to start thinking around what do you do as a leader? What do you do as a manager? How do you plan ahead? Good leaders plan ahead. They've got that idea of being able to organise and plan and structure and add value in that way. They're also good at problem solving when they come along. You've got to try to solve people's problems when it arrives. You've got to be able to organise people. You've got to be able to direct people. But let's boil that down to what does it mean in what I would think are the top 10 tips for a manager. Now, let's start with the first one, which I'm sure you'll know all about. In fact, what I'll do first, I'll do all 10. I'll list all 10, might make it easy for you. Then you can sort of see what we are, and then we'll pick each one of them apart. So the first one on my list is better communication. So be a good communicator at all levels. So being able to communicate. Second one is being able to motivate people. Third one is to build a strong team. Right people, right talent. The fourth one is to be present for the people around you. The fifth one is to be the leader. I'll get onto that in a bit, but to be the leader sounds a bit obvious, but we'll get to it. Know your numbers. Again, better reporting and know your numbers. Number 7, good time management. Bit of a strange one maybe for this list, but again, I think it's really important we dive into that. Number 8, always look at improvements. And that's not just your team, it's your business and it's yourself. Number 9 is take the time to reflect and recharge. And number 10, plan ahead and scan the horizon. So those are the 10 that I think will make you a better manager. So let's start right at the top, being a better communicator. We've talked earlier in the cast about people not being able to communicate very well. Some people struggle in a way. Some people like different forms of communications. But of course, what always gets called out in survey after survey or conversation after conversation around leadership is that fact that the poor communicator is the one that doesn't do as well as a manager. A person who will send an email to everyone as a communication and think they've done it. You know, communication's about that two-way street. It's information is being generated and information is being received. And of course, the receiver is a person who judges if they're being communicated to correctly or not. Because if you're generating it, you think you're saying the right things. You think you're communicating over. You know in your head what you want that person to get over. And you sometimes really get frustrated if they don't. It's like, what's up with these guys? Something wrong with them? I've been telling them this and they say they're still not communicated to. I just don't get it. I think one of the really simple things you hear is that you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should listen twice as much as you talk. Not sure if I do that. But the science behind that, and there is some science behind this, says that the speaking brain, or the way we speak, will run around 160 words per minute. So when we're speaking, we're at 160 words a minute. Now, some people speak faster, some people speak slower. But the brain processes a lot higher. So it's got a lot higher processing speed. It can be processing up to 600 words per minute. Now, that means that when you're talking and communicating, people start to fill the gaps because the brain's not at full optimization. Even now, listening to me, I bet you can't remember what I said a minute ago. I bet I can't remember what I said a minute ago. But if you know what I mean, your brain is probably working at 100 miles an hour. You may be walking the dog. You might be driving a car. Might be sat at your desk. Whatever you are doing, your brain will be doing lots of things. And to focus on someone talking, it can be quite difficult. So you've got to over-communicate because the brain itself is trying to fill those gaps all the time anyway. So sometimes the spoken word isn't the way forward. We're in a very visual environment nowadays. I mean, most of us will have some sort of social media, whatever you think about that drains your time. It's either TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest. I'm sure there's more. But all of the ones that you do is you sort of end up sitting there for 20 or 30 minutes scrolling through a load of rubbish, watching dogs dancing or someone with a squeaky chicken, whichever. But I think what we need to do as a manager is over-communicate. Of course, use your technology. You know, use the old and use the new. Don't be scared about doing the old newsletters, sending a paper out to people. Maybe not environmentally friendly these days, but that sometimes works. Notice boards. Put it up there, but make sure they're refreshed and changed. Try to be creative. If you've got some sort of work-based Facebook, I know there is a few of those around, try to use them. Could you use a video message? Simple, short video message. Could you use an audio one each day? Do you just do your briefs? You know, almost standard briefs, which, wow, imagine that, standing up in front of people and talking. But remember, in business, you know, 50% of what you're going to be saying, people will forget straight away. And that's unfortunate means you're going to have to repeat yourself over and over and over again. But it's one of the keys, if you want to be a better manager, is to be a better communicator. The best people you see throughout the world, not just in business, but in all those other areas, are great communicators. The great leaders, the great politicians, the stars are good at communicating. They connect with people, they communicate. And that's part of that idea of information generator, information receiver. So that's the first one. Be a better communicator and work on the techniques you can to communicate and be better at communicating. And of course, taking feedback is really key. So if you're going to communicate, ask for people to feedback honestly that what they heard and really get people to be honest. Not that sugar-coated stuff that you get sometimes. Ask people to really be honest and give you some real proper feedback about how it's gone and how it didn't go. And if they don't get it, I'd rather they said they don't get it. Because if you think it's working and you keep repeating the same message, well, who's mad here? If we just keep doing the same things, getting the same, thinking we're getting a different result, you're not going to get there. So that's number one. Number two, motivation and motivating people. People have to be motivated. If you're not going to be motivated, then it's really, really difficult to get anything moving. If you've been involved in any group or any sport, if you haven't got people motivated, how do they actually get things done? Now, motivation can be difficult to measure. I guess if you walked out of your office or onto your shop floor or wherever you're working and asked people, how are you doing? Everything okay? They go, yeah, everything's great. Everything's fine. Yeah, no problem. But how do they motivate people? How do I measure motivation? I mean, you could talk about things that are, in those motivators that you can sort of pay for, the money, time off, bonuses. Very difficult, though, to judge if those are actually working as motivators. One of the things you can judge is job satisfaction. If people got pride in what they do. Again, that depends. Some people may really enjoy the work for the work's sake, been there years, enjoy the work. Others, more difficult. But of course, you've got to make sure that you're allowing those people time to come to you and talk to you about motivation. So again, back to that first point about communication, one of the things that does open up is people's motivations. When you've got good communications, you can help motivate and get people in the right direction. There is some basic hygiene factors you need to know. Get the pay right. Make sure you're paying people correctly for their grade in there. We all know with the pressures that we're all under, you can't pay amazing wages without something else giving. And that means you're going to have to take costs out somewhere else, or your product or service is just not going to be competitive enough. But when you use communication, you've got to make sure that you've got those two ideas of how to motivate. Now, old school motivation, you'll have probably heard the analogy before. I don't know if it still stands now, but carrot and stick. I don't know what motivation somebody having a carrot was, really. I mean, if you're just giving someone a carrot, then, is that a motivation? Or the stick? Now, obviously, it's related to our animals, and that's where it falls down, because we're not animals as such. People do have some animal instincts, but we're not animals, are we? So if you're going to start using a carrot and a stick to motivate, you might have to look at yourself and say, maybe these aren't the right things to do. In reality, does that really work? That the idea of a carrot and a stick, well, actually, it's a blend, isn't it? We know that people turn up to work because they need to turn up to work. They're there for a reason, and that can be a psychological reason. Most of the time people get through that door because they need the financial reasons to be able to pay the bills and the lifestyle that they want. But, if we're going to be talking around that idea of motivation, if they come into an environment that feels like there's lots of sticks being used, it's not a place that you want to be. I've worked for an organisation that had the smallest carrots going, but the largest sticks. And surprisingly enough, I didn't stay there that long. So have a look at how you can get motivations linked into things that are tangible, such as outputs and goals. That can be really easy when you're talking about very straightforward transactional work. So if you've got to produce so many meters of something or so many thousand pieces of this, that can be a lot more easier to understand when people are motivated to do it. Are the people on the line actually motivated or just going through the motions? That's more difficult. But the softer motivations are a bit around how the place feels. What does the culture look like? When you do your surveys, do people like working there? What's your turnover of staff? Are you losing staff left, right and centre? Are you getting a feel for the place? And as a leader, getting down there and talking to people and even just standing around the canteen and getting the feel for the place soon gives you a word of what's been going on and how things are working around your motivation, if you like. So that's it for motivation in this area. So we're looking at motivating and motivating people. It's a carrot, it's a stick, and all that jazz. But obviously less of the stick these days, and obviously probably not so much carrot. Okay, moving on. So number 3 is building a strong team. So this is the idea of right people in the right roles. Now that's easy to say. And it's also easy to say recruit the right people. Yeah, of course. Brilliant. So we get the right people in the right roles in the right time. Very, very simple. Unfortunately, most people who either inherit a team or move into a team are not going to be able to go around and just say, right, okay, everyone's gone, clear everybody out, I'm going to start again. Normally, you inherit a team, therefore you're going to be working on how you can get that team better with what you've got. Of course, it's important to bring in the right people at the right time. So your recruitment strategies, the way that you put yourself over and the way that you're building a team is something you need to consider. And I would always consider it as a manager and make sure that you are refreshing yourself every 6 months, every 8 months. Is my team working? Do I have the right people in the right place? Do I need to move the pieces around the board? Doesn't mean anybody's leaving. Doesn't mean you're getting rid of people. Just means that you're making sure that the people you've got are in the right place to have that build of strong team to deliver results that you want. So, when you get promoted, normally inherit a team, and sometimes that means you have to take the time to look at your team and say, well, what do I need from this? Do I start to change things? Do I move things around? You need to make sure that you're linking the motivation of your team, so understanding that principles, but also looking at the right structure. So building a strong team is around knowing the people on the team. So get to know your team, get to know their strengths, get to know what their buttons works, get to know what motivates them, their values. That's a great way to start with teams. Whenever I've gone into a new business and moved roles, I like to understand with a one-to-one structure what those people are there for, what really makes them tick. Then you can sort of start to say, what does that person really need to get better, to get stronger in that team, to push forward. And realistically, and let's be honest, this podcast is about being realistic. Sometimes some people need to be successful, not in your team. And that means a sideways move into another department, and sometimes this is the right thing for them. They leave the business and you look at recruiting somebody else into that position. So to try to get the balance of a strong team is making sure you know the people, know the strengths, build them, build the strengths, and then where there is a gap or where you need to build strength, bring in people who can add to that and therefore build the team going forward. So number 4 on my list is be present for your people. That's not meaning taking presents in for your people, but it's not a bad idea to bring donuts or fruit, depending on where you are, on a Friday. It's quite a nice thing to do. But the time, you've got time with those people. So make sure that when you're actually at work and you're in the presence of your people, you're present. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, there's so many distractions in our world. Since I started recording this podcast, there's been many distractions around the house, flashing up messages in the corner, emails. Technology overloads us. And of course, we have this idea that we can multitask, which we can't. Multitasking is fake. And it don't matter what sex you are, it isn't going to happen. What you can do is switch quickly from task to task, but that's not what you should be doing when you're with your people. You need to be listening to what they're saying. You actually need to be able to be aware of the words and take in what they're actually saying. But not just that. You need to think of the body language. What are they actually saying with their body, with their eyes, with their tone of their voice? And you can't do that when you've got everything pinging and banging in the background. You just can't. So remember to turn off and remove the distractions. One of the best things I think is go for a walk with your team. Get outside. So you've got that idea of just walking and talking, and you can really truly listen to what that person's saying and have a genuine human interaction, which is very much fading these days. As we all know, the push for technology has meant it's difficult. And after the pandemic, more and more of us are struggling to get back into the idea of being humans and interacting as humans should and have done for many, many years. One of the things you should do as a test as a leader is to stand in a restaurant. Or maybe not stand in the restaurant staring, that sounds a bit weird. But go to a restaurant and you sit there and look around and see how many families, how many couples are on their phone. And you might do it yourself. There's not wrong with that. Sometimes I do it. I'll get around with the family and we'll all be sat on our phones and you just think, well, are we actually having an interaction here, or are we just on his own, in his own little world on his phone? So, the idea of when you're in a meeting or when you're in a one-to-one, get the laptops closed. Get them phones out of the way. We know that the worst thing is a virtual meeting for this. There's so many distractions in the background. But if you're going to be present as a leader, make sure that you do them changes and make sure that you're also stopping, thinking, how do I design my space, my one-to-one, to make sure that I am as present as I can be with that people, to make sure that they have got your time 100%. Active listening is another way. And that's repeating back, saying back what they're saying, mirroring them to try to get to that interaction. You mirror the body language, you mirror the way that they're speaking. And that means that you can then make sure that you're linking, that they actually feel that you are really listening and making sure that you and them are connecting to get that real genuine presence moment. The people, they always say that about people, you can feel that somebody really, really wants to bond and bother with you with the way that they act, the way that they look at you, the way that they interact with you. So just have a think about that idea of being present when you are with people, genuinely being present. Now, number 5 is be the leader. Now, obviously, this podcast is about being a leader. But what does that really mean? Well, if you boil it right down, the buck stops with you. Yes, that's right. You're there to make the call. So how do you make the calls? Make sure you're getting the right call. Well, of course, as a leader and of many, many years, I never make a mistake. I always make all the right calls all the right time. No, I don't. But actually, in waiting and thinking about how I make the calls, I start to think to the idea of the 70-40 rule. And I'm going to do a podcast on that in the future. But the 70-40 rule is the fact that you should have at least 40% of the information before you make the decision. But you don't wait till you get to 70, because there's a balancing point between the two, and that's where you look at it. But when you are in a business, it doesn't matter what style you have or what culture you live in. Our jobs as leaders, and to be a leader, is to make the decisions. Make the tough decisions sometimes as well. You've got to bring energy. As a leader, you need to bring energy. Even then, some days you don't feel like it. You need to bring the energy and be a genuine person who can be there for your team, but you're still a leader. You have to make a decision. So remember that you are going to have to make a call. And sometimes they're not pleasant calls. Sometimes they're not popular calls. But you are in leadership not to be popular, but to make the leader's decisions. And that's it. That's how it works. Of course, take counsel. Get people's buy-in. But remember, don't worry if not everyone is on the same page as you. You're going to get most people coming with you. You're going to get naysayers. But at the end of the day, as a leader, you've got to lead. Hi there, if you've gone this far through the podcast, thank you so much for listening, and you must be enjoying it because you'd have switched off by now. But anyway, what I would like you to do, if you could, please share this podcast with whoever you think could really get benefit for you. It gets the profile of the podcast out there, gets people listening, and of course gets more people better at leading. And what could be better than having better leaders around us? They're going to lead you, they're going to lead me, they're going to lead the future. So please, if you can, share this podcast wherever you can. Get more people interested in it. Talk about it at work. Say, I've been listening to Manager Matt. What a great thing to listen to. Who fancies listening to it? Maybe get a little competition going. How many people could listen to it? Have a quiz. But anyway, only joking. Please get more people to listen. Please, if you can, subscribe. That'd be brilliant. And, of course, pass it on. Thank you very much. Let's get back to this week's show. Here we are. Number 6 is probably the one that you'd maybe not think I'd talk around, but something that's really important. That's knowing your numbers. We're all going to be assessed with a form of KPIs, so some sort of key performance indicators. It's either going to be around things like profit and loss. It's going to be around accidents. It's going to be around quality. It's going to be about number of calls picked up, shrinkage if you're in a kind of business like that. You might not think it's your strength numbers, and it's not mine. I don't think I'm the most knowledgeable at the finance parts. I've got people who can do that. But you need to know, as a leader, what you're there to deliver. So you need to know your numbers. You need to know what you're going to be judged on and what you're going to judge others on. So it's all around the idea of you might not be doing, but you need to make sure that you know those numbers and you can communicate those numbers to the team so they are passionate about delivering them. So you might be the person who is going to be asking for the report. You're not going to be the one who's generating the report. But when you get that report, you need to know what it means. Because if you look there blankly at a load of numbers on a page and you haven't got a Scooby-Doo, you're going to be the one who's not going to get successful. So I think it's really important that you know your numbers, get your data, dig in, ask the right questions, and if you don't understand, ask, what does this mean? Usually, there's many people around you who would love to tell you what it means, and there'll be people in your organisation, if you've built the right team, who will be passionate about the finance part of it and will love to get you up to speed and make sure you know, as a leader, your numbers. Number 7, good time management. What does that mean? Well, you've got 24 hours in a day. I'm sure you're all knowing that. And you probably need 8 to 9 hours of work. You might work more, you might work less. But you've got to make sure that you're leading and being present for those 8 to 9 hours. So you've got to make sure you're managing your time. Because you know who's out there? Time bandits. Not the guy from the film, but time bandits. People come in and steal your time. So you think you've got your day structured, you've got all the work you need to get through, you've got a couple of meetings, but that's not the most important part of your day. But you know what's going to happen? Someone's going to break in and nick your time if you don't watch them. So have a good time management is about having a good structure, getting your one-to-one set up so that people aren't queuing outside the door, jump in and tell you something that could wait for your one-to-ones. You know, you want to make sure that you're not reacting to unimportant and non-urgent stuff, which can easily happen. You know, I can walk through the business sometimes and people try to grab you. They try to tell you, do this. Oh, well, this is really important. Might be important to them, but it's not important and urgent to you. You've heard of the old thing of monkeys on your back. Everyone trying to pass off your monkeys. You're going to make sure when you're walking around, you don't get time bandits coming in and you don't get the monkeys off other people's backs. It's getting a bit confusing, this analogy now. We've got time bandits and monkeys, but go with it. So make sure you've got a regular pattern to your day. You know when you're going to start and finish, roughly. You know when you're going to respond to your emails. You know then you're going to start and finish certain jobs. You know what's urgent and important. It's well worth taking the time sometimes as a leader to go through what you do in your week, make some records and say what time do you use where and what part of that should be either delegated, not done altogether, or what should you be spending more time on to really get those results. So that is number 7. Have some good time management processes. Number 8, always look to improve and always look for improvements. You know, you're not perfect. You never will be. None of us are. But you should always be looking to improve. Now, that means look at areas in your control. Can you improve the safety, the quality, the delivery, the efficiencies? Look at the costs. You know, how much labour, raw materials, energy. What can you do to improve that? How can you improve your team to work better? They talk about marginal gains. Could we improve every area by 1%? If you think how many areas are in a business, if every one of them went up by 1%, how much would that be worth as a competitive advantage? Sky Cycle team famously did it. They took the idea of improving 1% across everything they do, made a massive difference to their performance, and everybody else does the same now, so it becomes even more difficult. Look at having improvement ideas. So how do you generate, as a team, not an individual? Again, you use your team. You're there to clear the path. You're not going to do it all yourself. You're not the expert on everything. So how do you get your team to have those improvement ideas? You know, what are the problems that you need to be solved? And then get a team around it. What waste is there that you need to remove? You know, what does the customer actually pay for? What do they pay for in their process that they're happy to pay for? Or the stuff that you're adding anyway that you really need to remove? There's so many things out there that are adding waste or cost or time and really doesn't need to be there every day. And in another form, if you think of improvement, personal learning. I think every day, in my mind, is a day to learn. I don't know everything, but I try to expand my knowledge, learn, listen, read, try to understand people's different perspectives and what you can learn from them. If you can commit to learning one day, if that's a reading, listening, that makes such a massive difference over the whole week. You spend half an hour, even 15 minutes a day learning something. You're going to be a lot more cleverer and a lot more well informed at the end of the week, as long, of course, as you put that into practice. So you've got your formal learning, your informal learning, but make sure you go out there and learn something, because at the end of it, you've always got to look at improvements and you've got to push that business forward, because standing now here, if you stand still, you're going backwards. So make sure that you're always looking to improve your teams and improve the way you look at that learning process. Number 9 is take time to reflect and recharge. Yep, step back. Regularly step back and look at what you've learnt and reflect on the decisions you've made. We're so busy, aren't we? We never stop. Never have a chance to actually step up, take that next level helicopter view and say, what's gone well? Have we hit our goals? Are we on target with the projects? Are we still in the right place? Are the goals still right? Are the projects still right? You don't do it. You get so much into it. You just keep going and going and going. You're racing 100 miles an hour to get things done. And you get your teams in the same place. But actually, you need to sometimes do that idea of taking the time to reflect, step back and have a look. Sometimes we only reflect maybe twice a year if you're lucky on your goals. That's not the way to do it. The idea is to have your urgent and important business development goals always at the front of your to-do list. So you're always pushing it on. And the second part of this was around recharging. You can't run at 100 miles an hour 100% of the time. So plan some shut time. down in your day. So have some downtime. That can be a daily breaks for a little mini recharge. Switch some tasks, move from a mental task to a physical task. Go for a walk. I always say this, go for a walk, get yourself out, get some fresh air. Make sure that you're doing the things you need to do to recharge so you can come back stronger. Even a 15, 20-minute light bit of exercise, bit of fresh air will make a huge difference for the rest of your day. Number 10, plan ahead and scan the horizon. So, we're looking at the way that you need to change your sight and your lenses when you're looking out there. You need to scan that horizon. If you're operating at a low level all the time, deliver the hour to the hour and day to day, sometimes that's needed. But also the fact that you need to step yourself up sometimes and go to that next level and see what is coming around the corner. What is the new things that's going to hit your business? Because if you don't keep an eye on that, it's going to come and catch you out really, really quick. You won't see the next challenge coming if you're too far down. If you're looking down instead of up, then sometimes you miss it. I talk about this, down in the weeds. Sometimes, guys, we need to get really down in the weeds. I don't know why I did an American accent there, sorry. But yeah, I can understand that. You need to make sure that you're at the coalface, understanding it and really get in there. But sometimes you do, as a leader, should be looking the other way. Look up, see what's going on. Need to keep up with industrial and economic changes. For example, things like the cost of living coming, the ageing workforce, even the rising in things like vegetarianism can catch out businesses if they're too slow to react. So as a business leader, you need to make sure that you're out there looking at industrial shows, going and looking at internet, researching, keeping your eyes away from just the day-to-day. Block some time out in your plan if it helps to schedule proper time to really plan ahead and scan the horizons. Well, there you are. That is the top 10, in my mind, that'll make you a better manager. Let's just have a quick refresh of what they are. So, number 1 was being a better communicating and engaging at all levels. Number 2 was around motivating people. 3 was about building a strong team, right people and right talent. Number 4 was being about presence at work and being present for your team. Number 5 is be the leader, make the decisions, make those tough choices. Number 6, know your numbers, get better reports and know how to understand the reports. Number 7 was watch out for the time bandits, get some good time management practices in. Number 8, look at improvements. How can you, your team and your business constantly improve? Number 9, take the time to reflect and time to recharge. And number 10 is to plan ahead and scan the horizon. Well, like I said, a little bit of a longer cast this week. I've not done one at this length. I do hope it works for you. But of course, as always, I'm here and very keen to hear your thoughts on the show, both good and bad. So if you can send me your feedback, it is a gift, to managermattpodcast@gmail.com. I answer every single one of the emails people send to me. So I would love to engage on new topics, get some feedback on this longer format or some of the old stuff we've done before. And remember, put whatever you learned into action, because if you don't use it, you lose it. Right, that's it for Manager Matt this week. Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this Manager Matt podcast. We hope you found it interesting, helpful and actionable. One last thing, please leave a quick review on iTunes or with your podcast provider, as it helps to spread the word of Manager Matt. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you did like anything in particular, send an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com or visit managermatt.co.uk for more content. Feedback is a gift, so let's keep giving. See you next week.